Okay, I'd like to bring the April meeting of the Metro North Committee to order, please. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of March 23rd?
Motion.
Second? All in favor? Any contrary? Carried. Committee work plan hasn't changed?
No, but if I may, Jim, I just wanted to make one announcement to the committee. I'm pleased to let everyone know that we have appointed Danny O'Connell as Director of Operations Planning. Danny's started at Conrail in the late 70s. He's been with the railroad over 30 years, has worked his way up from ticket seller all the way up. And so I just want to acknowledge that and ask Danny if you'd just stand for a minute. Okay.
Okay, committee work plan has not changed. Status of operations.
Good morning, all. As usual, I will briefly summarize what is in your book. Status operations on page 14 of the handout. In March, we operated at 97.4% below our target of 97.6. The AM peak and the PM peak were both below target, while the off-peak weekday and off-peak weekend were above target, and again, the AM reverse peak was below goal. For the 31 days in March, we operated below 95% 3 times, and one of those times was below 90%. There were 465 trains late in March of the 17,986 scheduled trains. 115 trains operated over 15 minutes late, and 27 of those trains were more than 30 minutes late. 99.5% of our trips were completed, and 95.5% of our trains operated with a full consist. West of Hudson is on page 18 in your handout. It operated above its target in March at 96.9. In March, 53 trains operated late out of the 1,706 trains. The Port Jervis was at 96.6. The Pascack Valley was at 97. In March, 99.9% of the West of Hudson trips were completed, and 22 trains ran more than 15 minutes late, with 9 of those trains more than 30 minutes late. As reported, the overall on-time performance at the end of March was 97.4. Our year-to-date on-time performance at the end of March is 97.2, and right now we're up to 97.5. We're just a couple of shades short of our target of 97.6. The reason for this is a pretty bad winter in January, a clear February, and then we had the disastrous snowstorm early in March. It particularly affected the New Haven line fleet. Most of the snow went towards New Haven. And a lot of the DC traction motors and stuff on that fleet gave us headaches for the year. On the really upside of all that, the Hudson line year-to-date is at 98.1%, and the Harlem line year-to-date is at 98.6%. And I shouldn't say this, but so far the Harlem line in April is running at 99.1%. So we're pretty much pulling ourselves out of that particular hole. Mean distance between failures found on page 19 of your handout. In February, it was 85,000 against a target of 105,000. And I'd like to move on to one other thing, which is our annual fleet maintenance report, can be found on page 100. As we have discussed several times before, each of our fleets are maintained at many various locations throughout the two-state area. There are 13 different time intervals, and inspections can take place up to over a 12-year interval. The plan that is used to implement this schedule must take into account such limitations as shop space, storage yard constraints, manning, material availability, needs of service, and the ups and downs of unplanned maintenance events. Reliability-centered maintenance is our central tool for doing this. All of the modern fleets, the M7s, came into service in a reliability-centered maintenance program. We backfitted the Genesis locomotives and several other fleets into the same kind of program, and you can see the results on our mean distance between failure. And I'll take questions either operations, MDBF, or the fleet maintenance plan.
Jim.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. I just had one question. It was on what seems to be a continuing deterioration in the MDBF on the coach fleet.
You're looking at the overall number. I can divide that number into two for you. Year-to-date, the standard trailers, those without the cabs on them, are running at over 300,000 miles. They're doing much better than we expect. partially because the rebuild program we have going on in Canona, New York, from Bombardier, has been mostly focused on trailers, and the trailers are coming back. They're just now doing the cab cars. The cab car performance is falling off, but we expect to see that come right back up again as soon as those cars go through Canona. And because a lot of the critical equipment for the coaches are on the cab cars. The controllers, control stands, all of that is there, the cab signal system. The trailers have virtually nothing on them. So I see no reason why it shouldn't continue to rebound.
And that reconditioning program, is that on schedule, or is that?
I believe it's slightly behind schedule.
No, it isn't. It's behind schedule. We have 48 cars delivered, 43 have been accepted of 104, but it's behind schedule.
Yeah, Jim, we've been reporting for a period now that it is behind schedule.
We weren't happy with that.
Well, we're not, because it is behind schedule. We have been meeting with Bombardier regularly. We were up to Canona in January to meet with the president of Bombardier, and we meet with them regularly to go over the project. There has been significant improvement since we started our dialogue, but they were in a very deep hole, and now they're working their way out of it. But it is late, and we are not pleased with it because of the fleet performance.
Will it cost them?
There are liquidated damages
Yes.
that they will have to pay, yes.
But as a result of these conversations, Bombardier changed their management team out there, and since the new management team in place, they've been getting back on schedule. So I don't think they ever quite catch up, but we're getting cars now on a fairly regular basis.
That's good to hear. The number of the level of the MDBF for the coach fleet, really helps the whole fleet because it is so high, and so you want to, at least I'd like to see that number
Absolutely.
Where it should be.
We count on the coach fleet to hold the MDBF number up along with the M7, so we pay a lot of attention to that.
Any other questions for George? Kim?
Good morning. On page 26 and 27, I'll be discussing Metro North's February financial results. For the month of February and the year-to-date February net deficit for non-reimbursable activity is favorable to budget by $6.5 million and $7.9 million for the month and year-to-date respectively. Total revenues are in line with the budget. Total expenses before non-cash adjustments is favorable to budget by $4.6 million and $3.4 for the month and year-to-date respectively. Note that these results do reflect the non-service related AAB savings. The service-related AAB savings, we continue to work with MTA towards implementation. And on that note, in the month of April, we did start carrying out the actions to reduce weekend consists or train lengths. On the cash side, on page 31, net cash deficit is also similarly favorable to budget by $2.9 million or $8.8 million for the month and year-to-date, respectively. All other details have provided in your book, and also included in the agenda book this month is the 2008 year-end results. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Any questions for Kim? Thank you. Ridership.
Good morning. The ridership report for February is in your book starting on page 40. Excuse me. February ridership was 2.6% below 2008. This continues to, I'll say the negative trend slightly continues to grow. We had seen minus 1.8 in January. Year-to-date ridership is 2.2% below the same level 2008, first 2 months of 2008. Commutation is where the loss from ridership is growing. Commutation ridership in February was 3.1% below 2008. Non-com ridership has been fairly stable the last 3 months. Actually, it's the trend this month, minus 1.8, is slightly better than the trend we had seen the last 2 months before that. By line, ridership is down 2 to 3% east of Hudson on all 3 lines. And as I already mentioned, commutation, non-commutation, commutation is somewhat worse than non-com. To from Manhattan, ridership is down 2.7. Intermediate ridership, which had always been the fastest growing part of our market, also now is seeing declines. Intermediate ridership, neither to or from Manhattan, was down 1.7% in February. Across the various line segments, we're seeing losses of 2 to 4% east of Hudson on basically all the line segments. Slightly more on the outer segments than on the inner segments at this point in time. West of Hudson, fairly similar. February ridership was down 2.8% versus 2008, and it's down 2% year to date. The Port Jervis line ridership was off 4%, and the Pascack Valley is still slightly up, about 0.5% up versus February of 2008. So a very slight increase. With regard to our managed connecting services, they're following the same trends as the rail ridership. We're down in the range of 5% or so on Haverstraw-Austin in Hudson Rail Link. Newburgh Beacon was well below that because we had the ice and we had the lack of boat service for some time in February. Any questions?
No questions? Capital.
Thank you. Good morning. The capital program report's on page 50, and I have a few updates for you. Cortlandt parking, we have that being advertised on the street now. That'll add up to as many as 750 spaces at Cortlandt. Station projects, the Hudson Line stations, Phase 2B. Phillips Manor, Scarborough, and Ossining is moving along. The most notable accomplishment in the past month has been we've set the stairs on the north side of the inbound platform at Ossining. Yankee Stadium Station, we're going to open the station on May 23rd. Right now we're a little over 90% complete, and our focus is on the electronics, communications, lighting, and elevators. After the station's open, there's an Arts for Transit component, and that'll be installed in June. It's going to be a 200-foot-long mosaic, which will be on the south wall of the overpass going to the stadium. We received bids for the New Haven Line station improvements for Portchester and Rye, and we've also received bids for the Tarrytown, the new platform and the new overpasses project. Croton Harmon Shops and Yards, that project is 87% complete. Right now we're finishing up the painting and the tile. It's about 95% complete in all the buildings, and we're installing and testing the equipment that goes in those buildings. Moodna Viaduct, we're mobilizing for the priority repairs that are the foundation repairs for Moodna Viaduct, and we've also selected an engineer for the next phase, which includes some of the steel work for both Moodna Viaduct and Woodbury Viaduct on the west of Hudson. Any questions regarding capital?
Questions? Safety.
Good morning. I'll summarize the safety statistics that are in your books beginning on page 55. First with employee injuries. These are results through February. During that period, we had 37 more employee injuries this year than we did during the same period last year. The lost time and restricted duty injuries, we had 25 more during this period than we did last year. 20 more, resulting in a lost time and restricted duty frequency index increase from 0.5 to 2.4. And our FRA reportable injuries were up from 9 during this period last year to 32 this year, an increase of 21, resulting in an FRA frequency index increase from 0.9 to 3.1. As I reported last month, we are really suffering here by comparison to 2 extraordinary months at the beginning of last year. But we are very concerned about this trend, and we've taken a number of steps to mitigate it. So I'd like to take just a minute to summarize those. Beginning in January, when we saw the trend become unfavorable, we really started with a task force that looked at a number of issues, and especially a focus on our on-track protection work procedures, since they figured into the fatality that we had in January, and also a couple of near misses that came to our attention. That task force has developed some near-term recommendations that we're in the process of implementing now to tighten up our on-track protection procedures. And also, we're organizing that group to conduct a review throughout the balance of 2009 that will look in depth at all different aspects of the procedures that we use to protect employees when they're working on or about tracks or equipment. In addition to that, we did have a letter to all employees from President Permit emphasizing the importance of safety. And we also organized a company-wide safety week in which we mobilized people throughout the operation to conduct safety meetings and to hold an extraordinary number of safety contacts one-on-one with employees, including an increased number of efficiency tests and safety audits to really heighten everyone's awareness of safety. We produced a batch of material for that, which we distributed to line supervision so that they could hold safety meetings and briefings for their employees. In addition to that Safety Week, we've identified some additional actions, including trying to increase significantly the visible leadership in the field from senior management. Mr. Walker and I will be kicking off tomorrow a series. We'll be the first in a series of briefings for management, district by district. So tomorrow afternoon we'll be meeting with the entire management team in the Harmon district to bring to their attention where we stand and the importance of turning this around, and some of the recommended actions that we think they need to focus on. In addition to that, the safety team, in cooperation with operations, will be identifying, we're going to try something new, and we're going to look at identifying particular work groups that seem to have injury rates that are significantly higher than their peers, and we're going to try to leverage our efforts by focusing in on those particular work groups and coming up with specific action plans tailored to the work of that group and the injury experience in that group. And then lastly, we're working with the operations services folks to identify some strategies that we can use in each of our operating districts. We do rely on our district teams as kind of the focal point for safety activities in the local areas and our major terminals. And we'll be working with that team to identify specific strategies that they can take in their local districts, including enhancing the role of the local safety committees where there's the most significant amount of craft employee participation. So we have a number of actions going. Hopefully we're seeing results. I can say that March was a pretty strong month, and then we tailed off a little bit at the end, although the rate of increase over last year declined significantly. And so far in April, the good news is that we are doing significantly better than we were last April. On the employees, on the customer side, it's basically a good news story there. There were 26 customer injuries during this period compared to 54 last year, a 48% decrease. And our injuries per million customers was down from 4.3 to 2.2. And as of the end of February, we had no FRA reportable customer injuries. So we were at 2.2 last year and 0 this year through the end of February. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Were the employee injuries concentrated in any particular location, or were they broadly spread?
We do have a couple of districts that had higher rates than other districts, but the variety of injuries was extremely diverse. We did have a cluster of slip, trip, fall accidents, weather-related, during January and February. We did have an incident in GCT where we had 10 employees that they basically were not injured, but they sought medical evaluation for smoke inhalation because they were involved in the response to a very smoky fire in the train shed in Grand Central. So those cases do count, even though no one was seriously injured. And we did have a couple of motor vehicle accidents in which there were multiple employees in a vehicle, and in both cases we were rear-ended by another vehicle. So there were some small clusters, but generally it was a very diverse, unfortunately, set of circumstances.
Any other questions? MTA, please.
Good morning, everybody. The uniform crime numbers for the northern region as well as the department are located on pages 59 and 60. Fortunately, so far for the year, the numbers are slightly down, both for year-to-date as well as the month of March. During the month of March, the only thing to comment on is St. Patrick's Day. As far as the police are concerned, it was nothing out of the ordinary. And as of right now, there's no common trends or anything like that to report on the crime. And that's all I have. If you have any questions for me.
Any questions? Thank you. Okay, we have a few information items that are left.
Yeah, let's see. Kim, do you have anything further on 2008 you want to add? So we have if there are any questions, that's in the book. Schedule change, Bob, could you speak to that one?
Yes, there was a west of Hudson schedule change on the Port Jervis and Pascagoula Valley lines April 19th. Primarily, it was related to Amtrak is doing a concrete tie, their own concrete tie replacement program on the Northeast Corridor. They moved into a new phase of that, and it led to a lot of changes on the Northeast Corridor that impacted connections for our customers at Secaucus Junction for travel to and from Penn Station. In a couple cases, primarily low-volume off-peak trains, there were longer connections leading to longer travel times to and from Penn, up to a number of minutes longer. I forget the worst case. 12 minutes, I believe, is the worst case. Late at night coming in. Actually, for one key train, the outbound Harriman Express in the evening, you get a 10-minute later departure out of Penn Station and a 7-minute faster trip home on our express train up the Port Jervis line. So that's actually on the very positive side. There were pluses, small pluses and minuses. East of Hudson, May 3rd. Next week, we're putting in. It's unusual for us to put in a schedule change a month after we had one in April, but we are involved with our concrete tie replacement project on the Upper Hudson, and we are putting in a new schedule on May 3rd. All the schedule changes are on the Hudson line. There are a lot of changes, primarily in the PM peak and PM reverse. The work now is going on between moving to a new section. Now the work will be going on between Beacon and Poughkeepsie. A lot of off-peak trains are changed by up to 15 minutes. These are not necessarily the kinds of changes you'd want to present to our public. We are hoping to have this schedule change in place for about 2 months, and we're looking to have a mid-July schedule change to restore all of the Hudson schedules back to what they were before the April timetable. As you're aware, when we talked last month, there are a couple trains that are truncated that don't go all the way to Poughkeepsie. We were doing a very minor amount of reverse peak busing. We want to get rid of this as soon as the project finishes in July.
Yeah, I want to add for everyone's information that the busing that we've been doing, this is the first time we're using MTA Bus as the bus provider. And we've been talking about doing more coordination between the two parties. So this is the first time we've done that. That went well when we did that reverse peak busing.
A couple of things regarding the May 3rd timetable. As was previously mentioned today, Yankees East 153rd Street opens on May 23rd. In the May 3rd timetable, all of the regular service that will serve the local community as well as people who want to park and ride from the Garage 8, as it's called, on East 153rd Street at Yankee Stadium, will be in the May 3rd timetable, shaded with a note that the station opens on May 23rd. In addition, we will be putting out a special timetable, which will come out probably about, let's say, 10 days later. They'll have all the special game-related services that people will have for service to and from the Yankee home games. And we will be serving, barring any additional rainouts, we'll be serving 59 home games between May 23rd and the end of the regular season in late September. One last thing is we have another change in our bicycle policies going into effect with the May 3rd timetable. Previously, we had fairly broad restrictions or bans on carrying bikes on the trains, both in the reverse peak direction, so out of New York in the morning, back into New York in the afternoon, as well as before and after the PM peak out of New York. We have changed our policy. We no longer have broad time period restrictions. After reviewing the policy, Metro-North is implementing a train-specific policy, so we're not allowing bikes on the really crowded trains, but even in those time periods, there are some trains that have quite low occupancy, a low enough occupancy that we feel we can allow the normal off-peak bike policy and allow 2 bikes per car, 4 bikes per train, on most trains. This is a great advantage to people who live in the city. We've got a lot of complaints from people over the years, the bike groups here in New York, Fibro Bike Club, New York Cycle Club, that people who live in the city would like the opportunity to ride to Grand Central and reverse commute out to Westchester or out to Fairfield County. This is a big plus for them, as well as people who come into the city now can leave between 3 and 4 or after 8 in the summertime when it's still light out. So it's a plus for them. Any other questions?
Let me add on Yankee Stadium, Yankees East 153rd Street. The service, we are providing such diverse and extensive service that we need a special timetable because the service will vary depending on the time and the day of the game. And as I think the committee knows, it includes the direct service for the first time from the Harlem line and from the New Haven line straight to the station for many of the games, as well as an extensive shuttle service between Grand Central 125th and the new station. So we will have this special brochure will lay out to the customers a very complex and very extensive service so they know how to get to and from the games. And that's why we're doing a special timetable. It's such a it's a large market, and there's so much service. We want to make sure we explain it in a way that people can understand, and so that they'll be taking the trains.
Any questions, Jim?
The park and ride is from Yankee Stadium is certainly a long-awaited and very, I think, important addition to the both the commuting health of the county and you know, all those environmental reasons why we want people to park and not drive into the city. We're going to make some special efforts to advertise that so that.
Yeah, let me say, we agree with you. We think, and you have an action later on, which is to approve the agreement with the City of New York that allows us to make that the park and ride. We think that it's a real opportunity for people to take the train who are driving either from the northern suburbs or from New Jersey, a big market coming over to GW Bridge. The train will be about 15 minutes from Yankee Stadium to Grand Central. As you know, you can easily, depending on traffic, it can be between a half an hour and an hour to get to Midtown from that location on the highway. So we think that it's an opportunity. Plus, we have, by getting the parking lot that Bob described, it's a very easy on and off, excuse me, to the Major Deegan from that parking garage. We will, Jim, we do plan to do some marketing. Given our financial circumstances, that's one of the things we've had to look to reduce, and so we're trying to balance how we spend some very small amounts of money, but that is one of the priorities, to let people know about that you now have this new park and ride and a new way to get into the city.
Yeah, well, happily, it's also a revenue enhancer if we
Sure.
do get a good response.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in regard to that, have you, in this planning for this park and ride, have you taken any steps to mitigate or soften the impact of additional vehicle traffic on the neighborhood?
Yeah, Norm, we have looked at that. The amount of traffic in the neighborhood is very small because it's direct access from the highway right into the parking. So there's very little extra travel. But we looked at that when we did, as I recall, the EIS looked at that.
Yes, and when the EIS for the station was really done, they looked at the impact on local traffic. At the hours of the day that our people will be coming off the Deegan and into the garage, it's not the peak hour or even the peak area, peak time period for traffic around there. We're expecting a lot of our people to be coming off quite early, given our current commuting patterns. So it was not seen as any significant adverse impact on the local community.
Any other questions?
Next, Randy, could you just summarize the agreement with the county?
Sure. This is a continuation of an existing license. It's a 3-year term with Westchester County. Our parking lot at North White Plains is landlocked behind a county lot, so we've combined forces. The county runs a lot under the terms that are outlined here. The 3-year term will provide a 2% increase for us. That's on top of a 16% compensation increase that we enjoyed tied to last year's parking fee increase. Going forward, the parking fee increases will be shared between us and the county. Outside of this, Mr. Permits asked me to give an update on the transition to LAS parking, which is a much broader effort. As you know, the committee and the board had approved that action just a few months ago. On April 1st, that action was implemented. LAS parking assumed management of 34 station parking facilities throughout the system. Key to that was the communications plan that was executed. There were over 10,000 letters sent to all of the permit holders. There were station notices posted. A new website was created through LAS, rrparking.com, which is very user-friendly. I encourage you to take a look at it. It enables you to download applications, and this summer it will be upgraded so you can actually transact your parking permits online. In addition to the communications, were goals that we had set to maximize parking availability, improve consistency and performance and maintenance. I'm pleased to report that LAS has been through all 34 stations, has cleaned or super cleaned most of the facilities at this point. Over the weekend, Garrison was renewed. As you know, that's a gravel parking area. They have hired and trained over 40 personnel who will now be uniformed to support all the different operations, which they've decided to do many in-house instead of contracting out. So they have a much larger maintenance team, service personnel, folks answering the phones. We continue the same phone number. Additionally, one of the challenges is the parking meters, the current ones in the system have reached their end of their useful life. One of the terms that were negotiated was LAS's investment in replacing those meters. I'm pleased to say that we've started a pilot actually this morning up in Poughkeepsie with the new meters that we plan to roll out throughout the system. We want to test those for a few months, make sure they're satisfactory. They include a new capability that none of the other meters have, which is the acceptance of credit and debit. So today you can pay without cash. Down the road we'll be rolling out pay by phone, where you can actually skip the meters and pay on your cell phone. So those efforts are continuing. Poughkeepsie rolled out the Parking Ambassador Program, as well as at Riverdale and Woodlawn. Also at Poughkeepsie, in partnership with the MTA Police, the ambassador there is assisting with the new cab stand that was started with LAS personnel, MTA Police personnel, and a new traffic circulation plan. So a lot of the pieces are unfolding quickly since April 1st. The financial benefits of the program are still on target, over $28 million in revenue to Metro-North in the 7-year initial base term. And given LAS's investment of over $800,000 into those meter replacements that we'll see in the next 6 to 9 months, and a few $1 million in cost avoidance for us, we'll experience about a $33 million benefit in the base term.
Any questions?
That's great news.
Yeah, I just wanted to add congratulations to Randy and his staff. This type of transition was almost seamless. We had a few complaints, a few hiccups, but the transition from one company to the other, this over the number of spaces we did, with the ease we did it, is really terrific. And so they were working for months putting this together, and it came out just the way we would hope it would have.
Good job.
I think we did the fleet maintenance plan already, so move to the action items.
Yep.
Okay. The first one is the agreement with New York City for the Yankees East 153rd Street Station. Just what this is, as you know, we had a major agreement with them a few years ago, which explained how we were going to split the cost of the station. There were certain items that needed to be specified down the road. This is the down the road in the operating agreement. And what this provides for is really three things. One is it provides for the parking tied to the park and ride. As you see, we were able to negotiate a very reasonable parking rate. People show up before 9 o'clock. It's $5 a day, except on game days. There's also no limitation on how many people will park there. Those are two of our goals when we had the discussions with the city. We have agreed to take over the maintenance of the overpass. It had been split 50-50, and we also agreed that we would get all the revenue from all the advertising that's in the overpass. That also been split 50-50. We think that's a fair arrangement between us and the city. And we also, the agreement allows us to make any modifications after a year based on what we see, since this is a new station. I will say that even though our station hasn't opened, the overpass has. We do have advertising in the overpass, for which we're getting money already. And so we think we have an opportunity to get a significant amount of revenue at that station.
Jim, it's all right. Howard, I just I read this, I think, pretty carefully. I just wanted to clarify. In a sense, the thing that we gave in order to get this other arrangement is that we were going to be picking up the repairs under $35,000. Is that the way
that is correct, yes.
And we wouldn't have done that before. It would have been 50-50.
It would have been 50-50.
Got it.
Any other questions? Need a motion? Second? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Okay, next is the agreement between, unit ticket agreement. Bob, you want to just say what that is?
Yes, we're planning to kick off with Hart. This will be a third feeder bus service from Connecticut over to Harlem Line Station. This one will go from New Fairfield to Southeast. They'll have 3 parking lots. We have made agreements with 2 in the state of Connecticut, 1 in Southeast, just over the state line. We have a 4th parking lot lined up. If the project proves to be successful, then we have some additional parking we can bring online down the road. What's before you this morning is our normal unit ticket agreement between us and the operator, where we have an attractive low bus price to get people to try the service. We split with Hart the small amount of subsidy per ticket versus what their normal monthly is. We certainly expect that we'll get enough new customers that will well more than pay our initial upfront investment in buying down the price, and on the rail revenue we'll be making a profit on this. I just want to mention this project is, again, as we've done with these other ones, we've had a significant amount of involvement of New York State DOT that has helping to pay for a lot of this project. They've been, as always, very cooperative and very supportive of our efforts to improve access to our stations, and our thanks go out to them.
Sorry to be sort of continuing to monopolize the questions here, but a couple of quick things on this, Bob. What are the size of the buses that are involved in this shuttle? Just generally, I mean, they're big buses, small buses.
They're small.
They're vans.
They're the vans, like shuttle vans, like you see at the airport.
That's what I thought.
20, how many? 18 passenger vehicles.
Yeah. This looked like such a nice sort of win-win situation here, and it has been in other cases. It seems to the services seem to be centered up in that corner of the county. And tied in with Connecticut to a certain extent, I guess. I'm not sure. But is there a reason why it works there and it's not working, or let's say we're not able to expand this into other parts of our territory? Because it's such it's a sweet thing.
Yeah, Jim, I think first it has been expanded. If we do it, we have a number of places where we've had this kind of service. We use similar vehicles are used in the Bronx, in the Hudson Rail Link, and in Westchester County with all the shuttles that leave from White Plains or Tarrytown or North White Plains. Those are similar types of vehicles. Within Westchester County itself, the responsibility for bus service is Westchester County's. So you will see services coming into Westchester County, for example, from Ridgefield, right, in Connecticut?
Yes.
Yeah, Ridgefield to Katona, or if Tappan Zee Express, where you're crossing county lines. We'll see that. And here you're seeing you're crossing state lines. Within Dutchess County, the responsibility is the loop. So they will do it, but it's where we're going intra-jurisdictional is where you see NISDOT comes into the play, and that's how those services get set up. Right. But I think most importantly, I mean, our goal, and we've said this for many years, is to improve access. And as we do, either through LAS in terms of getting more effective parking use, or building at Cortland, we also run buses, as you know, wherever we can to get people to the station. And so it's the goal for us has always been get us to the state, get people to the station, let them access the station.
And I'll just mention, Gene Colonies is here. In the state of Connecticut, there are a number of programs from Greenwich all the way up through to New Haven, where the local, where Connecticut DOT's CT Transit plays a role in many of them. There are a couple other local bus providers that provide a lot of services, but as Howard mentions, when it's intra-jurisdictional, the local operator takes care of it. When it goes across county lines, or in this case, we've got 3 experiences now where basically the state of Connecticut, state of New York, HART, and Metro North are dealing with cross-state line projects. It needs a little bit of special organization for those, because the local process probably wouldn't lead to that kind of service if the states didn't get involved.
Yeah, not to belabor it, but I think that having this kind of targeted, sort of small cap type of service, bringing people to the stations, I mean, it really seems to be the long-term answer to what is an endemic lack of parking at our stations. And if the model works elsewhere, that if we could kind of ram it home, you know, within the intra-jurisdictional situations, I think it would be great. And you know, I just put it out there as an idea.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I need a motion. Second? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Okay, next is a grant agreement to accept about $10 million from NISDOT for the South First Avenue overhead bridge. Bob, did you want to add anything more to that?
I think it's pretty straightforward as it's laid out here. This is a pot of money. We're able to get some funds to rebuild this structure over the railroad in Mount Vernon. It's a project we've wanted to do for a long time, and now we've got a fund source.
Need a motion. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Okay, procurements.
Okay. Procurements.
Do you want to?
Yeah, just a prerequisite. Howard and I went over these procurements, and we looked at the effect on the restrictions on spending to make sure that all these were necessary, even though these were all subsequent to or prior to the spending. And we reviewed them, and all of them seemed to be fine. And as a matter of fact, the one that we looked at specifically was our ticket.
Right.
And it all followed the scheme that we had set up, or that had been set up by the MTA.
Yeah, and I would add that one of the things we're doing, given our financial circumstance, is we are also looking at how we purchase materials, and to make certain we have a review underway that's being led by Anthony Bombase and with Kim and with Donna Evans, looking at how we're purchasing things, making sure we're only buying things we absolutely need. So that's a review underway as part of the budget process. With regard to these procurements, there are a couple of things I want to highlight here. First of all, we have 4 joint procurements with the Long Island Railroad this month. We'll talk about them. Well, let me highlight them now. One is the joint purchase of fuel, and let me just say for a minute on that. This is a very large procurement. We worked very much, Anthony worked with Dennis Mann in the back there, who is the Director of Procurement at the Long Island Railroad. This took a number of months. It's a very complicated procurement, but we were successful in completing it, and so that's a joint fuel procurement between the 2 railroads. Let's see what else. The second is the change to the ticketing machines. Jim referenced the change order Scheidt and Bachman, so that we are consistent with the latest requirements of the credit and debit industry. Thirdly, we have a RFP to request approval for test of bicycle racks, which would be used on the M7s and then potentially on the M8s if it works. And then finally, we had a joint procurement with New York City Transit where we procured locomotives for them, and you'll see there's a delivery charge for the Chautauqua locomotive. Additionally, Long Island Railroad had one joint procurement that affected us for OEMs for machinery used by the M&W department. So that's the overview. Do you want to have a motion, Jim, and I'll talk to any of them?
Can we get a motion to move these? Motion made? Get a second?
Okay.
Now have discussion.
Yeah, I just want to highlight a couple of things here. I mentioned the fuel to you. There's one, I wanted to explain one to you of the, to highlight the one with, let's see, the request on the steam in Grand Central. Just to explain that one, let me see what page that is. Page 130, and the staff summary is on, let me see, here it is, on 139. This is just to explain what this is. We are asking your approval for really two actions. One, to increase a contract to Danella Construction, and secondly, to increase to lease a truck to provide steam while we make repairs. All these costs are split with Con Edison 50-50. This is the agreement we have on our steam lines. We had an emergency last year, about a year from now, where we had to go in and repair 3 locations on an emergency basis. We awarded the contract to Danella. We made an estimate at the time what it would cost to do remaining repairs. Subsequent to then, we found a third place. We thought we had 2 more to do. We now found out we had 3 more to do. Plus, with the experience Danella had doing the first 3, led to a higher bid from them when they came back to do the remaining 3. In addition, we need to provide steam to the hotels who are on the grid, so we need to rent this truck. So that's what we're requesting approval of. Again, it's a 50-50 arrangement with Con Ed in terms of who pays for the cost. The rest, I think, are relatively straightforward. I'd be happy to answer any more questions.
Any questions on any of the procurements?
Yeah, real quick, what's the tie?
George, you want to?
As we go through and do our regular maintenance on ties, we're pulling them in and putting them out, and the tie injector actually stuffs it under the railroad.
That's kind of what I thought it was. Why is this specifically just for Metro North Railway? It can't work on a different...
Because it's set up to work with the third rail.
Jim?
I don't think we've had any kind of a full-blown presentation on the bike racks. And I just wondered if we could have kind of a word picture of what didn't work and what is what is in the pilot that is being brought before us today.
Sure.
Okay. Go ahead, Bob.
Okay. We had, I'll say, a grassroots level, we had done some with the interior designer, MTA's interior designer for car design, Cesar Vergara. We had done some, personal work for him, we had done some research in terms of existing bike hooks that hang a bike off on the wall. And we had found a French manufacturer, and we'd actually, through a fairly laborious international procurement, picked up, I think, 4 of them, which we had installed around the Howell days on a pair of M7s. The French bike hook proved to be unsuitable for our needs based on the first couple days of seeing it in action with my 35-year-old French 10-speed. It didn't secure the bike adequately for our purposes. The bike was flopping around, particularly when you accelerate, decelerate into and out of stations. We learned from that more about what we need. So that was, I'll say, that first pilot was unsuccessful in terms of that specific design, but we learned a lot from it in terms of what our needs are. Following that, we did an RFEI. Anthony Gardner's group in Capital Engineering did an RFEI. We had 3 or 4 bike manufacturers, bike hardware manufacturers responded. We talked to a few of them. They showed us what they can do. That was fairly positive. So coming out of that RFEI, we're now going to issue an RFP. And 1 or more of these manufacturers, we're going to negotiate a pilot installation, similar to what we did with the French bike hooks, a small number. We'll install them on some M7 cars. And we've got the very limited funding we need for a pilot. if this pilot is successful, and we identify a manufacturer who makes a bike hook that would allow us to put the bikes, hang the bikes on the wall, and get them off the floor so they're not blocking the aisle, blocking the vestibule, would be a very positive thing, we think, if it's properly secured. Assuming we have a successful pilot, then we will have to address in this environment whether we can identify a funding source to roll out more of them, both on the M7 fleet and possibly to incorporate, and it'll be obviously a cooperative effort with Connecticut DOT. If it's successful, do we want to try to incorporate that into a certain number of the M8 cars so that you've got bike racks on the M8s as well?
Yeah, let me add to that. What we will do is we will also look to see if we have any potential sponsors who would like to use this as an advertising opportunity to pay for it. Because as Bob said, given our funding circumstance, it's going to be very hard to fund something like this, given all what other needs will be.
We're working with MTA in terms of there are some green funds, grant sources and fund sources. This is clearly a green project, so we're pursuing that also, of whether there are any third-party grants for these types of projects that we might be able to identify.
Okay, any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. No need for an executive session. Next meeting is Wednesday, May the 20th. Change. It's the Wednesday before the holiday at 8:30. And then
Thank you.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Carried.